Well, today I'm so delighted to welcome Sam Kelly to the Modern Motherhood podcast presented by AllMomDoes. She is part of that dynamic duo of Scott and Sam that many of our listeners are going to be familiar with from the radio world. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Julie. So glad to be here.
Well, Sam, you have had quite a long career in radio. Give us a little backstory on how your career in radio began.
It was so funny. I think God has a sense of humor because I was such a shy kid that my mom didn't even know what I'd be able to do when I grew up. And she told me, maybe you could do research or you could be a librarian, but, that could work for you. And it was just one of those things. I think God likes to take people who don't have a lot of talent in an area and then help them. And then he gets the credit for it. And I wasn't a Christian. I was actually doing sales. And I was kind of miserable in the job, and I was on a sales call, and one day I just pulled the car over to the side of the road, and I got out, and there was a giant, well, like a wishing well or something, and I prayed to this God that I didn't believe in, and I said, could you give me a job that I could love and that I could do? And I went home that night, and there was a guy that I knew who had an overnight radio show. And out of the blue, he said, do you want to do an hour of my show just for fun?
Wow.
I was terrified. I was so terrified. And I was like, yes. And I did. And as soon as I did it, I went, this is for me. And I promise you, every time I would talk, I knew that I was too shy to be doing it. And that's how I became a believer, because I was like, I know there's someone helping me do this. And he has helped me for so many years. It's every morning I wake up and I go, I can't do this. And it happens anyway. And to me, that's just a miracle in God's grace and his graciousness. And he uses the weird ones to make stuff happen. So I'm grateful.
That's amazing. I think so often we do take a look at our aptitudes or the things that we think we're good at, and we decide that that should be vocation. And it really is a beautiful thing to be able to say, and then God decided to do something else. You can take, right? You can make all your plans, but God's going to order the steps. And how incredible that that's part of your testimony. That's how he drew himself to you, was through giving you such an unlikely career path that you in and of yourself felt like you would have never been able to achieve. That's incredible.
It's still funny, too, because my dad was in the military, and he will still call me, and he'll go, you know what, Sam, if that radio thing doesn't work out, they are looking for chaplains in the military. And I'm like, okay, Dad, I think I'm doing okay. It'll be all right.
So how long have you been in radio now? How long has this been a thing for you?
I think about 20 years, maybe 15. I sort of lose track. It's like birthdays. After you get past a certain number, you're just like, it's something.
And in that career path, did that feed into the fact that you didn't get married until later in life?
I actually got married right out of college, and it was a marriage that, I think I wasn't a believer and he wasn't. And when I became a believer, it was very strange for him. And so he ended up having a few affairs, and he left, and I prayed and I believed God for that marriage. And after about 2 years, it just was so clearly done. And I mourned that so hard and felt like such a failure. But God is a God of second chances, and it delights me, and I will say this, it's encouragement probably to anyone who's done it wrong the first time, is that when you do it wrong, you have more appreciation when God makes it right. You see more the blessing that he's giving you. And for Carlos and for me, he had a failed marriage as well. And when we came together, we were just so grateful. We were like, oh, this is wonderful. And that has helped us. And I know marriages aren't perfect. It's hard. It's a lot of work. Anyone who's been married more than a couple of years knows you have to work at it. But I'm grateful. So that was why. And we never had any kids in that first marriage. And I'm really grateful for that. And then when I married Carlos, I thought, now this is a man that he believes in God, and we're like-minded, and I would love to have kids with him, and he didn't want to have children. And so I agreed. I said, okay, let's not do it. And he had a son who was about 6 years old, Desmond, and I fell in love with this kid. And then I started thinking, what would it be like to be a mom, and have a child all the time that you didn't share with anyone? And I told my girlfriends, and they said, well, let's just pray. So the girls prayed for about 2 years. And one day Carlos said, okay, let's have a child. And then we tried. And then it was another 2 or 3 years. And I just assumed I couldn't get pregnant. And it bowled me over when I was pregnant. I had no idea. I was actually talking with a listener. I was emailing with her, and I said, here are my symptoms. I think I've got the flu or something. And she goes, you're pregnant. Go to the doctor. So I learned from someone who was smarter than I was that that's what was going on. But I just did not expect it. It had been so long. It lets me know God doesn't forget you. If you've prayed for something for a long time and it doesn't seem like it's for you, it will come. It can come. If it's His will, it'll come. And I think having Zoe is definitely His will. So clearly.
We do seem to have a really interesting construct in our culture about the timing of when things should happen. And when we think something's too early or we think something is too late. My husband and I married, I was 21, he was 22, and there were people that were just sort of in a panic for us that was so young. They thought we both, had been through college. He was finishing up. I had been working in media for a couple years at that point. And so at the same time, I know people who feel like, oh, wow, well, I'm already pushing into my mid-30s. It's over. Yeah. I'm not there yet. Why do you think we do that? And what's some encouragement that you can speak into that space about this odd deadline or timeline that we kind of, in a compulsory way, put on ourselves?
Don't you think it has a lot to do with story? I mean, we love movies, we love stories, and the stories that we look at have things done in a traditional way. And I think that we try to own those and fit into those. And one thing I've learned from walking with God is that nothing is the way that you think it's going to be. And there's something very beautiful about that. And I wouldn't trade the strange path. It's a little different to get married later and to do it for real and to have a baby. And I'll tell you, there are some days where I'm like, whew, I'm tired. There's probably a reason women have kids in their 20s instead of their 40s. But it's a miracle. I mean, it makes me younger. It makes me stronger. And even for kids, Carlos had some boys. And when we got married, I promise you, those boys were like the boys in my heart. They were the boys I would have had if I could have had kids back then. And I also think, we need to be brave about things like that. If God tells you this is your person, you go in, and it might seem a little scared or a little untraditional, but you go in and God will redeem it.
That's beautiful. Let me back up just a minute on that first marriage where you came into faith and your husband at that time did not. What do you feel like the faith community potentially could have done that would have been of help for you in that situation? At the church where I serve, we've got a couple of ministries that I'm really thrilled and honored that we've started. And I one of those God ideas that I would not have thought of to start for myself. One of them is called Spiritual Mismatch. It's for women whose spouses are not yet believers and are praying toward that. The other one is called Hope in Shiloh, and it's for couples who are wanting to have children but have had infertility issues or pregnancy loss or adoption challenges or anything of that experience. And I'm amazed as I realize we really don't offer a lot in our faith communities for people going through these kind of scenarios. What would have been helpful to you in that season, in that first marriage?
It would have been really strong for me had I had a female mentor who was older than me, who could have counseled me with wisdom, because as a young lady, I probably did it all wrong. You're so angry and you don't understand. And, now that I'm older, I understand better that sometimes, sin is going to happen in this world, and it can happen in your marriage. It can happen in relationships. And how we react to that can determine how it turns out. And that would have been important to me. I think my husband at the time was addicted to online porn as well. And I don't think we talk about that a lot in the church and what that can lead to. And had there been some brothers who'd been willing to step into the ugly and stand with him, it might have helped him. It's hard. I think one of the things I felt was at the time, and I was working in Christian radio by then, was that I was almost untouchable in some communities. It was almost like, ooh, don't talk to her or him, or it might rub off on you. You might get a divorce, or they're infamous. And I felt very alone. And I think he just made the decision, no, I don't want any of that. And I pray for him now. I pray that he is in the faith, and I don't know, but we all do things strangely when we're young sometimes. And I'm grateful for second chances, and I pray second chances for him too. And I hope where he is that there's a church and there's some brothers and that they can talk about real things.
Yeah, and engage him in that way. So how did you find your courage when Carlos began to come into your life to open up your heart again? How did you do that? Because I'm sure we have listeners out there who may be going through a situation similar to yours, or coming up, maybe they were both believers and the marriage still blew up, and they're saying, love is dead. I never want to go down that path again.
Right.
How did you find that courage?
I wanted to be married. Everything in me wanted to be married. And I was hopeful that God would send the right one. I remember I met Carlos at work, and we did devotions at work, and he was giving the word one day. He was sharing a message. And I just looked at him and I thought, what would it be like to actually have a husband who believes in God and who knows the word and can talk with you about it? And it just seemed so impossible. I was pretty scared. And so we dated for about a year and a half, I think. And I would routinely break up with him because I was so scared. We're just going, I'm sorry, it's just not going to work. He would go, okay, well, I'll see you tomorrow. And he would just be calm and whatever. And I finally had a girlfriend come to me, and she was a believer. And she said, I feel like God is telling me, I have to tell you this, right? He is a wonderful man. He loves God. You love him. He loves you. You got to stop this. Like, if you don't, there'll be some time where you break up with him and he won't go, okay, see you tomorrow. He will move on and you'll be so sad. So don't make me talk to you again. Go. And after that, God made it really strong in my heart that this was the man for me. And I've never thought twice about it since then.
What did y'all do to lay a foundation in what has been for both of you a second marriage and with his children? And what are some of the pieces of wisdom that you can give to women out there about if you're beginning a new journey with a new person? What are some things you want to get right, get different? Who are the people you want to invite into that space?
I think, first of all, this was true for me, is I don't think you should even consider going into another relationship until you fully figure out what happened in that other one. And by that, not just, well, he did this, but here's what I did, where you deeply grieve your own sin and you deeply grieve the things that you did that weren't helpful, that broke the marriage. And without that knowledge, it's really dangerous to go forward because, for me anyway, I would do it again. So I felt like for Carlos and me, we studied a lot. First of all, I knew what I would do differently when we started dating. I thought I messed that other one up. I know he did worse things or more things, but whatever, I did my part. And then we studied. We did classes and books. We did the Parrots, Saving Your Second Marriage Before It Starts. We did all the homework. We did the workbooks. We read the 5 love languages together, his needs, her needs. We were total relationship geeks. We took communications classes and all of this stuff. And I will say that even with all of that, and even with us both being believers, there are times where it's really hard. And so just to say, it's not easy. It's not going to be easy, but laying the groundwork, like you're saying, it gives you so many tools when it gets rough.
I love that you guys studied. I just think that is amazing. And I think a lot of times in our culture, even in our Christian culture, we think if something's meant to be, that somehow we're just going to magically know how to do this stuff. We're just going to get some kind of download, or it's some little chamber in the heart that's just going to pop open if the right person walks in, and we're going to know how to do all these things. And it does take learning. We haven't walked it out before. And if we're trying to, even if we have had a previous relationship, to walk it out in a way that hopefully gives some cushion, for maybe where things went awry the first time. Such incredible wisdom to really get intentional about gathering those tools.
Well, and I liked what my husband said at the time, because I was, first of all, I was a little alarmed. Like, he's handing me all these books and I'm going, whoa, this. But then he said, and this makes so much sense, he said, even if we decide at the end of doing all these books that we are not for each other, think about what incredible spouses we will be for the person that God does send if it's not each other. And that's a great gift to invest in. And it made sense. And he was right.
I love that. Now, you were already actively in Christian media at the time. You were actively ministering to your listeners when that divorce occurred. Talk about navigating that path. Did you have times that you thought, well, maybe now I'm disqualified. Maybe I shouldn't be in this lane, or why should anybody listen to me? How did you navigate in what you could have felt was a season of deep failure, staying in ministry, staying in the lane?
I went to the boss, the president of the company, right away, and I said, I'm getting a divorce. Do you want to fire me, or can I still work here? And he laughed, and he was a pastor. And he said, my mom and dad got a divorce. And he said, my mom was really smart, and she saved all the money. And they came back together again 10 years or 20 years later, and I got the chance to marry them. So he said, no, you're not disqualified. You're in. I will pray for you. He goes, take all the money. I was like, that's not my style. I was up front, and I was really scared. And then I talked with some wise people, and I said, what do I do with this? Do I share this on the air? And they told me, just be gentle with your listeners, because you don't want to take them on a roller coaster ride until you know how this is going to turn out. You don't want to take them on an emotional, crazy ride. And so I was very gentle. There was probably a season where I talked about really neutral things. And then when I started understanding what this was and what God did, I started talking about it. And the amazing thing, and this is so encouraging to me, and hopefully it's encouraging to other people who are going through hard things, is the messiest, yuckiest, ugliest stuff that you go through is going to be the stuff that touches people the most. I've never had so many emails, so many connections with people. I've never prayed with so many people as I did when I was honest about what God was doing and how messy it was. And I'm continue that to this day. I mean, when Zoe was born and all the things that are not the way you think they're going to be, if you're really upfront with it, God uses that yuckiness to touch people, and that's so valuable. He doesn't waste any of your pain.
And speaking of Zoe, you had an unexpected path to pregnancy. You told us earlier that Carlos was like, nah. And then, my husband, Mike, very similar, did not want children. We now have 8.
Oh, my word.
Yeah. So Michael says, who do you think is the stronger persuader in the family?
Right.
But, you go from this place of you've accepted that he doesn't want any more children, and then he has this change of heart, and you get pregnant with Zoe at a more advanced age. I had my twins at almost the age of 40, and what were the things that they put on the OB charts? It was so mean. It was like senile, multi-grava, perinatal, like senile. I was like, wait a minute.
Yes, it's so offensive. I know it's like you get a little label put on you, at risk, and your file has like different colors on it and stuff. And like, come on.
Every conversation was, since you're an older mother. I was like, oh man.
You. I know, exactly.
We're going to jump right back into our conversation with Sam Kelly. But first, I want to make sure you're getting connected to other moms, a place where you can have community and inspiration. And that's why I want you to know about MOPS. It stands for Mothers of Preschoolers, and MOPS' purpose is to gather moms. MOPS believes in a simple but a revolutionary idea that remarkable things happen when women who are in those parenting seasons can come together and share their hearts. And that's why MOPS rallies women in their own neighborhoods to help them be more brave, more kind, more honest, one gathering at a time. And so if you are looking for a community of moms that you can share your heart with, your experiences with, that you can develop tools and be empowered for your parenting journey, be sure and check out mops.org. That's MOPS.org. And you there can find a community and find a local gathering that you can get plugged into and find those friendships and encouragement that you need. That's mops.org. You had this interesting journey with Zoe. So first of all, was her pregnancy fairly uneventful, and what were your expectations?
Yeah, it was great. I never felt so good as I felt when I was pregnant. And I expected she would be an amazing person who would probably surpass me in so many areas. We thought she'd be the best athlete. She'd be the smartest person. She'd be stunningly beautiful, all of this stuff. And maybe that's what all parents think. And then I didn't do any prenatal testing because I really felt like, it's not going to change my path, and sure, it'll be great anyway. God will take care of this. And so the time where we found out that Zoe had Down syndrome was actually when she was born. And I knew it before anyone else did because my doctor had said there was a small marker that she might have Down syndrome, but my doctor was pretty confident. She's like, it'll probably be okay. Don't even worry about it. Don't even think about it. So I didn't. And the minute they took this sweet little baby out and put her on my stomach, I looked at her and her face just looked so different and her eyes were kind of slanty. And I went, oh, she's got Down syndrome. And nobody else knew it. Like my mom and dad were there and they're celebrating, and Carlos was there and he's texting his friends. He's like, we got a healthy baby, and everyone's so happy. And I just had this sick feeling like, could we just all go backwards and she could go back in and we could just like be happy, because in a minute the whole thing is going to crash. Mm-hmm. And I wanted everyone to stay happy. I didn't want people to have to face it, and I already knew it. And it was just the most, you know how they say that when you look at your baby, it's the most joyful moment in your life. It was probably one of the worst moments of my life, honestly.
And you were on an island alone there for a little bit. Two of my children have been identified with special needs, one with a significant hearing loss, one had a stroke at birth. And with my daughter, Macy, who has hearing loss, we had gone in for what was supposed to be a routine audiological visit. My husband didn't come. He had a meeting at work and he was doing his thing. And so I just took her and I had at the time this audiologist with the worst bedside manner ever. Uh-oh. Not that I'm bitter.
Bitter on your behalf.
Yeah, she was 2.5 and we walked out of that booth and he said, well, clearly she's deaf. Come back in 2 weeks. And I sat in the car with her, you know, in her car seat. And I thought, I don't know how to call my husband and tell him what we think and the path we've been on is now going to be very altered. How did you navigate those waters, going from that isolated island, knowing this, that mama intuition, to beginning to unpack for family and with medical professionals and all the rest, this new baby girl who had come with a different accessory set than a lot of kids?
Were you disappointed when you discovered that about your daughter?
You know, I think in a sense, and I think because she was older, you know, I think we had gotten to have that newborn honeymoon, which, you know, you didn't get. I think in a sense it was more a shock and a guilt. I could not believe that I had just missed this for over 2.5 years. I mean, we knew that her speech wasn't developing, and it actually really pushed the doctors in her case. I had been the one saying, her speech isn't developing. They kept saying, oh, she's your 4th child. The other children are talking for her. You're being a nervous mommy. Nobody's ever accused me of being a nervous mom, but okay. And so I was really just trying to check off boxes, even though I, in retrospect, deep down, looking back, I knew something was off. I just couldn't... I couldn't put my finger on it. Part of it was just she would respond to some sounds. And so I didn't know that 95% of all people with significant hearing loss have usable hearing. You know, they will respond to some sounds and some things like that. So for me, it was more a sense of guilt and I can't, what do I do now? But yes. I think had we not had that baby honeymoon period, to be honest, I think there would have been even a disappointment with God. Like, God, how hard could this have been? Could you not have just tweaked that gene for her that would have made the difference? Sounds like to me maybe you felt a wash of disappointment.
I felt probably more like even what you felt. I felt so much guilt. I thought there must be something wrong with me, that here I'm with this man who is the man I'm supposed to be with. He's had all these children and they're fine, but it's me. And that I gave this man, when he stepped out on a limb, this child who is going to disappoint him greatly. And my husband did get very angry with God, and he was mad at God for a number of years. He actually went through depression. For me, it was more practical, because at that point we just had to do so many things. Like, she had a lot of medical things going on. After a while, she started having seizures. I had no idea. Like, I don't even know about regular kids. And I'm not a baby person. I don't know anything about kids. And then this is so different. And so I was just a frequent flyer at the hospital. And you know, at one point she had something like 7 different medications all day, and I was doing injections, and it was just one of the most joyless. That first year was just a lot of work and very painful. And I just put nose down and I just did it. And I never thought twice about it. I just thought, I'm just going to do this. And I didn't doubt God. I thought, if he did this then, or if he gave this, and, I know he didn't. I know God doesn't make our children have handicaps or anything like that. But I knew that he knew I was strong enough. And I just thought, I'm going to ride this out until the joy comes. And the joy has come in abundance. It is crazy how much joy we have in our house. Like last night, and my husband's healed from depression. We have this little girl who all she does is give love. She gives love to everybody. And we laugh and tumble and play. And it is the most joyful path in life. I was out for a walk yesterday and I was saying, God, you knew exactly the type of child that would be great for me. She's profoundly innocent, and I'm kind of innocent too. And there's no cynicism or harshness in her. And it's so beautiful to be around someone like that. And God knew that I would love that. And she is like a stunningly beautiful. She's a great athlete. She's very smart. And I think, why did I get all bound up? I think that's just fear. Don't you think it's just fear?
I think it's fear, and I think it comes from cultural expectation. And let's be honest. There are people who don't handle differences well. And I think any of us who have come through being ostracized, just because our hair was weird, are thinking, right, oh my goodness, my kid is going to be considered a whole lot different. I do think, though, the joy, I wish there was a way, with Macy, I was thrilled when my other kids started talking and began uttering first words. Let me tell you something. There was nothing like compared to the joy when Macy began to communicate once we got the right hearing aid technology and those things on her. Nothing like it. And for Mercy, who we didn't know, who she had a stroke at birth and we didn't know if she would ever walk, when she took her first steps, we were thrilled when all of our kids walked, but there was nothing like seeing Mercy rise to her feet and be able to do it. And so I think when you do have those corollary moments, we went through some sad stuff. I mean, trying to figure out what we were supposed to do and all of that. But I think that it is so important for people to know, too, that God gives in abundance joy in equal measure on the other side of the thing. And it's just been really incredible to experience. But I think you tap into something that's really important for people to know, whether you have a special needs child in your life that you're parenting or not. I think this is so important for people to know, is that it is okay to go through a period of time when you first get hit with this information, that you can be a little disappointed or really sad or worried or fearful. Sometimes I think, and I've had people do this to me, and I'm sure, Sam, you've had people do it to you. Oh, you're a hero. You're so noble. And you're like, look,
stop it.
Yeah, stop. I mean, it's not about that. It is a full human experience. It is the full range of emotions. And we need to give people permission to experience that's okay. And I will say, by God's grace, I tended to pick myself back up pretty fast and did what you're talking about, got real practical, went crazy on the research, got to know everybody at the neurologist office or the audiologist office or whatever, and very much had times sitting in those waiting rooms feeling like, man, God has appointed me to minister to people here, because I'm telling you, when you go into specialists who are working a lot with children with special needs, there are families surrounding you who may not know the Lord, who are struggling, who financially are completely strapped, who don't have these great support communities in terms of their faith communities. And the opportunity to just bring some light and some joy is massive. I mean, if anybody wants a great mission field, let me tell you, a pediatric neurologist waiting room is like an incredible mission field, my friends. So I love that you're honest about what the journey was like for you without trying to overpaint it in some kind of, altruism or whatever. But tell us about where Zoe's at now. In particular, I know that her first year of life was so rough. You were going through seizures and different things where she was really having a lot of medical emergencies. And then tell us how she's doing today.
She is amazing. Like, she's so healthy. It's incredible. And I have to tell you that I know the moment that God healed her, because the seizures they were profound. Like it's called infantile spasms. And what it is the brain waves just crash into each other. And if they can't fix it, what happens is the IQ just drops off. It just knocks IQ off. And already we're going, well, she has Down syndrome. We can't afford any IQ points. And every day and every minute that she has this, we're losing them. And it was so maddening to go and try all these different treatments and nothing would work. And we did that for about 5 months. And it just felt like there was a clock ticking. And all those times she couldn't smile, she couldn't move, all the things my friends were going through with their newborns and their babies, she wasn't doing anything. She just lay there and cry. And it was so unrewarding and scary. And this poor little girl, I can't even imagine how it felt. And I was invited to go and speak at this ladies' church group, their Christmas dinner, and I had to quit work. So it was after I'd already left my job, but I was on the schedule to go. And so I wrote to the lady and I said, I'm not working at the radio station anymore. Do you still want me to come to speak at your dinner? And I was hoping she'd say no, because I had nothing good to say. But she was like, oh, yes, we do. And I went, oh, great. So I went, and I had nothing. Like, I don't even know what I said. I just stood up there and I told those ladies, it's pretty horrible. Here's what's up. and just told them what God is doing. I told them, sometimes you don't know the answer. Maybe it's not a happy ending. I don't know the ending. I know my God, but I don't know the ending. And at the end of this speech, all of these women, and I don't know, there might have been about 400 of them, and they all prayed for Zoe right there. And at that time, she had never been able to sleep more than 2 hours. She, had all these spasms and seizures. And that night, they prayed for her. And it was the first night where she slept through the night. And we saw her heal after that. She got better and better and better and better. And I'm grateful to doctors, and I'm grateful for all the things we did. But I think more than anything, I'm grateful for women who look at something messy and then they go, no, we know what to do with this. And they prayed. And I'm grateful for a God who, his timing's exquisite, and he's faithful. He takes you right to the edge, and then he goes, no, I'm still here. And that's what he did for us. And our little girl, she's so vibrant and she's so delightful. I marvel at the things she says, and she loves to pray. She loves to give hugs to people, and it's just nothing like I thought it would. And, when I first got pregnant, and then after we had the baby, and she has Down syndrome, and all these beautiful mommies on Facebook who would go, if I could change it and take away that chromosome, I wouldn't do it. I'd leave it the same. And I was thinking, are you crazy? Yes, I would change it. If I could change it, of course I would change it. And I don't know, now, I don't know. I really don't even think it matters. I think more so than changing it, that Down syndrome is really irrelevant. She is God's creature. She's unique. She's special. She's here for a mission and a purpose. And I get to spend time with her for a while. And I just thank God for the honor of that.
So interesting, Sam, because so many of the things you said right there are the things that God laid on my heart with my girls, and I don't think we change it. They are exactly who they are supposed to be. Yeah. God has a purpose and a mission. Now, tell me this, a lot of marriages who have a child with special needs inserted into the middle of that marriage go through some really tough times. There are some pretty alarming statistics out there about marriages that include a child with special needs. How did you and Carlos navigate in your marriage with the different challenges that Zoe was having?
It was really treacherous. It was really hard. We almost lost it. The Holy Spirit was with us, and I think that made the difference. When Carlos was going through his depression, there was one time, and I think it was on Mother's Day, and I remember me on my knees talking to him. He was sitting on a chair, and I was saying, why are you doing these things? What is happening? Won't you come back? Where are you? What are you doing? And he said, I'm doing all these things because I want you to leave me. And he had been acting out so much that I was like, everything in me, my flesh was like, I do want to leave him. But my mouth and Holy Spirit in me, I said, I will never leave you. I love you. You're my husband. God put us together. I will never leave you. And that was the smartest thing I ever said, which I probably didn't say because I think Holy Spirit brought it out of me because it wasn't what flesh said. But that I will not leave you is, I think that's the key to a good marriage, a lasting marriage, is nobody leaves. Things are going to get rough, and you're going to do stuff or say stuff or feel things that are not pleasant. And you'll think, maybe I want to leave, or maybe I did this wrong. But if you don't leave, you give God a chance to redeem it. And not just redeem the other person, but redeem you. There was a lot of stuff in me that needed to change, and God brought that to me, and I would have missed out on it all if I cut it right there. And I'm so glad for that. I'm glad. I know with Carlos and me, I feel like we not only got a second chance, we got a third chance, and we're on that third chance now, and it's a pretty sweet chance.
That's beautiful. I know that Mike and I, in the process of our marriage and with Macy's issues coming to light and then Mercy's, it was really interesting because we didn't seem to go through it at the same time, which sounds odd, but I can remember that I was kind of grieving it early in and then got really practical, started looking at, okay, what therapies and what devices and fighting with the insurance companies and all that stuff. And then it was almost like it would be 2, 3, 4 years later that it would sort of hit Mike, the implications of this thing. It was really interesting. And so there were times that it could even feel a little bit lonely, like, okay, we're trying to do this thing together, but I don't know that he's got the full message on what we're dealing with. And then once we got more on page, I've learned to accept that and to communicate that into other marriages, saying, you may not be exactly on page at the same time on this issue, but just give it a little time. Everybody processes differently. Everybody has that moment when something kind of becomes revelatory to them in a way that may be different than it is for you. For Mike, it was interesting. It wasn't that it was the major moments that I had kind of gone, whoa, here we go. It was small things where he realized, wow, this kid is challenged in a way that is different than the other kids, and that's heartbreaking. And he kind of hit that moment. So it's okay if marriages are dealing with a crisis or a challenge on different timelines, although it can be scary. It can be okay. It simply has to do with how people process. I think that developing community in that season was really important. And the thing that was great with Macy was we had, because of the type of therapy she was doing, there was a little enclave of 3 or 4 moms. And as it turned out, and this is actually statistically almost impossible, such a great thing God did for me, was 2 of the kids in that particular small group of 5 or 6 kids that were doing like therapy camp together in the summers and all that kind of thing, 2 of those kids had the same causality of hearing loss that Macy did. So these 2 moms who were also both believers, we didn't all go to the same church, but they were also believers in Jesus. We were able to compare notes and talk about, well, what's working for Aubrey and what's working for Riley. And, we were able to have these conversations that were so important, because otherwise it would have felt even a little more lonely. Now, did I have that kind of support right within my church? No. I mean, it was something that was provided somewhere else. When it comes to Mercy's issues, same kind of thing. It's been a series of just connecting with other parents, not necessarily within my immediate faith community, but what I have felt really passionate about, and I have a sense you might too, is it's so important that we continue to communicate those needs to our faith communities. I mean, I personally believe that we all need to be under the covenant that King David made to Jonathan, where he said, I'm going to take care of you and yours. And then Jonathan has this son, Mephibosheth, who ends up as someone who is differently abled. And David is just absolutely activated to go and find Mephibosheth and bring him to the king's table and make him part of the community. And I think our faith communities need that little kick in the seat to remind them that we need to be advocates for those who are differently abled. They should absolutely be at the table with us, and we should be absolutely committing ministry resources toward them.
That's awesome. Yeah, I agree.
So with Zoe now, she's painting, she's doing all kinds of amazing things. It's incredible to see what the Lord is doing in her life. What do you think to those mamas out there who either A, are getting a diagnosis, like maybe one of the ones that we've mentioned here, and are just floundering, or B, someone who's a great good friend or an extended family member of someone, who is parenting a child in this situation? What do you want to say to them? What do you think is helpful and life-giving in this kind of situation?
One of the wisest things a friend of ours said to us probably in the first 2 months that we were home with Zoe, she came over and they brought dinner. They got it from a restaurant and they just showed up and they said, we're coming to dinner. And they brought it. And she looked at me and she said, you know what? I just figured it out. We're all special needs. Just some of us have a name attached to it.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting in my book, Raising an Original, I say just that. That's part of what God revealed to me, is that we all have special needs.
We do.
Yes.
Yes. And to celebrate the differences, putting your arm around someone and just sitting with them and we always want to say something to fix it. And when you're hurting like that, there's nothing that can really fix it. But if you just sit there and go, I see you. I see you. You're beautiful. I see your daughter. She's beautiful. And I'm praying for you. And that's what it is. And then you walk through it. And maybe it doesn't feel good for a while, but it will. You just have to remember it will. And you keep that in mind and you keep going. And then you tell your story on the other side.
Well, Sam, thanks so much for being with us today. And of course, so many listeners blessed by the Scott and Sam show and all of the encouragement that you give to your listeners, all of the heart. And we just send blessings your way to you, to Carlos, to the boys, and to Zoe. Life overflowing. We're just so thrilled about the life of this little girl and all that God is doing.
Thank you, Julie. What a blessing to be with you.
Well, I have loved my time with Sam Kelly. Be sure and check out all the things that are going on with her at facebook.com/Scott and Sam. You can keep up with all their radio and antics and inspiration. It's a great place to stay in touch with them. And I want to be in touch with you too. Look for me on all the social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the places at Julie Lyles Carr. And that's Lyles, Lyles, and Carr with 2 R's, Carr. A big shout out to Rebecca Beckett. She is our content coordinator, and Donna Tody, who is our producer. We love coming at you each week through the AllMomDoes, the Modern Motherhood podcast, and be sure and check out AllMomDoes on the social medias as well. Hey, next week we've got Les Parrott. That's right, of Les and Leslie Parrott, and we're going to have a conversation about why that fighting you're doing in your marriage might not be such a bad thing. And how about this? How are you supposed to know exactly how your marriage is doing? It's kind of hard to tell from your friends around you or from people's social media posts exactly how is your marriage doing. We're going to talk about how to assess that when I see you next time on the Modern Motherhood Podcast.
Thanks for listening. We just wanted to take a minute to let you know that just like you and your family, Purposely is also part of a family, the Krista Family of Ministries. Krista helps kids and teens learn and grow in their faith at King Schools and Miracle Ranch Camp. And Krista shares Jesus with people in the poorest, most remote places through World Concern. Krista Senior Living is a community of love and care, and Krista Media is a place of hope on the radio. God is changing lives through these 5 ministries, and Krista is on mission to share the good news of Jesus. To learn more, visit Krista.org.